All right, so this is my fourth time trying to record this because my microphone wasn't working, and then I did not hit record as I went on my last tirade. So we're taking it from the top. But be sure to like and subscribe for the effort. Today we're talking about body fat, and this is going to be a bit of a charge video, like controversy speaking, because there's a lot of just bad information about body fat, and I feel like most people who know what they're talking about will agree with me that I've actually been in the fitness space for a long period of time. But like for the past like 3 to 5 years, I've seen people have been calling it physique inflation, and it actually is like leaking over to like what's considered a normal body fat and everything like that. So like I literally have gotten comments saying that if you don't have abs, you're above 20% body fat. That is how they worded it to me. And that's what's basically spurring this video, to show these, I don't even know if they're trolls or just someone who is extremely misguided, how crazy that is. So there are two sites that I typically use to use for visual estimates of body fat. Very useful. I am not using myself in this whatsoever because that just adds in personal bias. These classifications have been done by personal trainers who have been in the fitness industry for about 10 to 20 years. So we're going to go off of these two websites just to show you the variance in body fat from individual to individual, and saying something so asinine as that you'll have abs at 20% and below is fucking crazy. So yeah, let's get to it. We're going to start at the beginning, which would mean 30% body fat. 30% body fat and beyond is like grade 2 obesity. Obesity actually starts here at 25% and above. 40% of men in the United States are above 25% body fat and beyond. Depending on what county you live in, depending on what county you live in, it could be even higher, and the majority of men are going to be obese. The vast majority of men, like literally 60% of men, are overweight and beyond. That's how fat this country is. 30%, very obvious what that looks like. Large midsection, probably over 42 to 43 inches, depending on your height. Once it's going to actually mainly pull in the midsection, but you will have like a layer of fat almost everywhere. But something to point out here is that there's still a significant variance in shape at 30% plus body fat. Granted, 30% plus is anywhere from like 30 to 50% body fat, right? We'll just take this individual up here with a bit of loose skin from loss of fat already. He looks significantly different than the individual beside him, even though they're probably roughly the same body fat. So like your own bone structure is going to change how your body fat looks. Typically, tall individuals tend to stretch out their fat more than hold all their fat in one spot. But that makes it very easy for them to carry a lot more fat than they really should, because they kind of mask it more than anything else. So like you'll see this issue for a lot of tall guys. But moving on to 25 to 29, we still have the same issue of like a literal beer belly for most men, except for the individual over here in the corner. Now, he is probably the best genetics out of this group because he actually has a sizable amount of muscle separation in his arms at 25 to 29% body fat. So like if he put a shirt on that was like a good fit and everything like that, he could easily pass for 20% body fat. But for the most part, it's just going to be some kind of pulling below the waistline. Your arms are going to be pretty much smooth, as in no vascularity, unless you're in the top 20% of genetics. Like even this guy has a bit of arm separation, but like it's clear he has a lot of weight in his midsection. That was 25 to 29% body fat. Now, we're getting to the point where we're going to actually start seeing a decent bit of variance between individuals. This is 21 to 24% body fat. Main guy I want to talk about is this guy with the swept back hair, because he actually has some form of ab development this high. But the majority of men will not have any ab development whatsoever. They might have some ab structure showing, whether it be mainly the xiphi humerus. That's the muscle here, not really part of the ab structure, but you get the point. You will have some muscle showing depending on your genetics here. And for the most part, most guys are still gonna have a bit of a pouch here. and depending on their posture, it's just going to stick out more. Now, this individual here actually lost a lot of weight, and it makes it look worse than it is because the skin's literally loose. So just keep that in mind. If you lose a lot of weight, you might end up with a lot of loose skin. It should tighten up within a year after losing the weight. But point being, with these guys, they are pretty smooth, all things considered. They don't have like any vascularity, but they also don't have a lot of pooling of fat, just like, you know, the normal troublesome midsection that most men get below the navel. Now, 18 to 20. We are at the point where we should have abs compared to that guy in my comments, right? I don't see a single six-pack here. And I'm not trying to be rude to these guys, but it's 18 to 20% body fat. This is just the start of the fitness range. This is where the love handles might actually show worse for some of you, because like you lost fat everywhere else and like your love handles are what remain. I have this issue. It's not fun, but like it's also a good tell that you probably need to start dieting if your love handles are showing after being lean for so long. But we might have some individuals that look like they have a flat stomach at this point because of their how their abdomen is shaped, but for the most part we'll all have a bit of pocket of fat still. For me, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because like 21 to 24% body fat tends to actually be a bit smoother on the surface just because the fat is more uniform. But when you get to 18 to 20% body fat, that's when you probably start seeing your actual trouble areas, and it can be a little bit of a psychological issue. Might just be a me thing. But last thing I want to point out, you can have cap shoulders at 18 to 20% body fat. This individual, pretty good genes, cap shoulders, but he still has a bit of fat on his stomach, and with how high his pants are, he's probably hiding a decent bit of it. So keep that in mind too when you're looking at pictures of people. If they have their pants hiked up, they're probably hiding their body fat. But his arms look a lot leaner than 18 to 20% body fat, right? So depending where you carry your body fat will change how you look to people and what muscle group you're showing, right? Now, 15 to 17% body fat. Again, this is where I've been told that you should have abs at. There is only one individual that has like true abdomen development showing, and that would be the guy up here in the top right. Very good abs for that body fat percentage, right? But none of these guys really have that. And if you ask me, the main difference between 15 to 17% body fat and 18 to 20% body fat is going to be the loss in that trouble area. So like the lower body fat that most men have will start to go away at 15% body fat. But there will be some individuals, depending on how their hips are shaped, that they will still have a little bit of protrusion of fat. And again, that's totally okay. You just gotta deal with it. You know, just keep going is the best way. You know it's there, take note of it for next time you accidentally get up this fat, and then continue going. But this is going to be where most guys I would probably recommend staying, like making your heaviest if you're cutting and bulking. So like this is the fattest you should probably get. Now, 12 to 14 is where if you have good ab genetics, they will start showing. So we have one individual of abs, two individuals, potentially three, but like I don't know if I would qualify this as good abs, because like he has really good ab inscriptions, but he has a decent bit of fat right below it, right? So if we're just going to make this simple math, it's 50-50 if you'll have good abs at 12 to 14% body fat. Now, most men will have a notable divot in the center at 12 to 14% body fat. This is the linea alba. It runs literally from your rib cage to your dick, okay? And that's what gives you like that deep, thick line that separates your abdomen to start. And then you get ab inscriptions, which this individual has a decent bit of. And that's what gives you the six-pack. So like if these lines are not particularly dense and you don't have a particularly blocky muscle between those ab inscriptions, your abs just aren't going to show that well at higher percent body fat percentages. And that's okay. But like you probably need to know this when you diet for an extended period of time, so that way you know where you need to continue to diet to. So like If you want abs and you don't have abs, you could easily be 12 to 14% body fat, but you'd still need to keep going, is what I'm trying to say. Just because someone else has abs at 12 to 14% body fat doesn't mean you will. Now, 10 to 11% body fat is usually a really good spot that most guys should target if they want like a true six pack, because that's where the point where most of the fat on the body goes away completely. Like we're talking like essential fats almost at this point. We're having like 5% subcutaneous fat at that point with like 5% visceral body fat. That's like the essential fat that you need to keep your body running. Okay. So like going much lower than this is actually pretty dangerous because you still lose that subcutaneous fat and you start eating away at those like critical fat reserves that are used for hormone production. So this individual with the swept back hair, remember him? He was like 21% body fat and had some ab development. Now he has even better ab development at 10% body fat, obviously, but like the main thing that happened is his waist got smaller because he lost fat on his obliques and then visceral body fat. So that's what really got him over the edge, on top of having really good ab inscriptions. And then if we want to see some relatively poor ab inscriptions, and I'm not trying to like shit on these guys, but like it's important to know, this guy up here, not very great ab inscriptions, but we all know he's ripped, right? This guy down here, no ab inscriptions, but he literally has more vascularity than the guy beside him that has better ab inscriptions. So what I'm really trying to say, and like even the guy here doesn't have that great of ab inscriptions, right? 10% body fat is lean as fuck, and like there's still like a 30% chance that you just won't have that creative abs when you get there. And my main point is like saying that body fat percentage is just as simple as if you have abs or not is a very childish way of going about it. And like if you do that to yourself, it's a disservice to yourself just thinking it's only about abs or fat, because it's like, again, we're talking about your entire body being covered in fat. We need to look at the entire body to accurately gauge. Granted, your stomach is where a lot of your fat's going to be stored as a man, but like there's a lot to it just besides body fat and abs. And then once we get to 7 to 9% body fat, that's where like everyone's going to have pretty damn good abs, just because there is nothing there to hide them. Granted, it's going to mainly depend on like tenuous inscriptions or the ab inscriptions. Like this guy up here, 7 to 9% body fat, and not that great of ab inscriptions, but like you can clearly see he's jacked out of his fucking mind. 7 to 9% body fat. This individual with the arm tattoos, he was actually down here at 13 or 12 to 14. No abs in sight at that point. So he could have easily had abs at 10% body fat. We just didn't see it in this collage. But there is a chance that he had to get as low as 9% body fat to have abs that look like that. And that's where it starts getting to that point, like, is this sustainable? So, like, there's going to be like a 50% chance that you can just not sustain abs long term, which is fine. But it doesn't mean that you are also stuck being upwards of 20% body fat your entire life just because you don't have abs. So, that was rippedbody.com. I'll put a link in the description for it. And then Bony to Beastly, there's a lot more to it. This is more for ectomorphs, not trying to figure out where they rank, but there's a lot of useful stuff here. So, the main things that we're looking for when we're trying to like self-classify body fat is going to be how your muscles look under the skin, obviously, and then how much the fat pools. So like if we look at 20% body fat, it's not going to be that noticeable on a skinny guy. And this is what skinny fat is, just because you literally have nothing on your frame. The little bit of fat that you do have is not very noticeable. But we're looking at like some kind of love handle or some kind of gut forming below the navel. And then as we lose weight, our stomach will flatten out. So 15% is flat stomach, meaning that your love handle is mostly gone, but you still have an even layer of body fat. And then faint abs is when you start eating into that layer of body fat, and you'll start seeing particularly your top abs first. And then once you get to like 9% body fat, most of your abs will be showing. And it's more apparent when you have a bit of muscle mass. So like, again, 20% more of a love handle because there's just more tissue pushing out the love handle. Flat stomach is going to actually have a little bit of ab development. Like, we're talking very minor because those abs are bigger. And then toned muscles, faint abs, 12%. So like when we say toned, we're looking for the separation between like the shoulder and bicep. I don't know how well it's showing on my camera, but that's really what we're looking for when we're talking about muscle separation, is the gap between the muscles, and depending on how long your muscle bellies are, is going to change how lean they look. That's another topic for another day. And then again, 9% body fat, 9 to 10% is going to be hard muscles, hard abs, hard as in you can see them in most lighting, while 12% faint abs means you will need good lighting to see your abs. So basically what I'm trying to tell you guys is like visually estimating body fat is actually quite difficult. And like if you have not had experience with a lot of individuals in different body fat types, or body types in general, it's going to be very difficult for an amateur to do. So like, don't fucking worry about what other people are saying in the comments in TikTok and Instagram and YouTube about body fat. If you're looking for a relatively unbiased way, that's probably going to be more accurate than a 16-year-old on TikTok. We are going to use the Navy body fat method. So this is very simple. All you're going to need is Orbi tape, and mine's broken. But basically, you measure your neck, you measure your waist, and then I like to measure my hip as well. So what I do is I am 6'1", and then I am 17.5 inches in neck circumference, all right? That's a relatively thick neck, but you get the point. This is actually my hip circumference. So this is along the hip bone. I'm 35.5 inches wide. This is my maximum body fat for this estimate. For the lower end of the estimate, I used my waist proper. So that was 32.5, or 34.5. Holy shit. So that was 34.25. So that would make my body fat between 11.7, which is pretty low if you ask me, to upwards of 14.7. And I think that's a pretty fair range for me, considering that I don't have like the best ab inscriptions. So the best thing about this is that it's completely unbiased. If you do it in a mirror, you'll be able to tell if you're cheating. So like if you're pulling too tight into the skin, you'll literally be able to see your fat being choked off by the Taylor's tape. And that's why I think it's so useful. These do have their downfalls. The main issue with the Navy body fat method is that there is a relatively high margin of error. The Navy says it's like 3.5% plus or minus. So like that would mean that my 11% body fat could be literally as low as 8% body fat, or as high as 14 to 15. And like if we're going off the higher one, 14.7, that could mean I'm as low as like 12% body fat and as high as 18 still. So like it's not perfect, but like it's going to be unbiased, and that's all that really matters to me, is that it's repeatable and unbiased. And as long as my waist is still getting smaller, I'm getting closer to my goal of whatever arbitrary number of body fat percentage that we're going for, right? I think I did a good job of explaining like what body fat actually looks like at this point, or at least someone else did and I just stole their work. But I don't really want to hear that I'm wrong here, because like to me you're wrong. So like if you don't really agree with me, don't comment. You can, it helps the algorithm, but I'm not responding, and like if it's overly rude, I'm just removing it. So keep that in mind. Might want to save the effort for that one. If you enjoyed this content, like and subscribe. Again, this is Amazingly Sexual Health channel, but I am trying to branch out a bit, and I'll see you in the next one.